Good morning, everyone. It's item number 3 is an invitation for a citizen to schedule time on the commission agenda for an item not listed. Is there anyone here that would like to speak on an item not listed on the agenda? Put on a future agenda. Seeing none, we'll move on to item 4, which is approval of the agenda. The agenda is in front of you. Is there any changes?
We're going to add an executive session in accordance with SDCL 125-2-1 for personnel. It is noted, the exec session is noted on the agenda as item number 12, but there was no codified law, so we're clarifying that.
All right, is there any other changes to the agenda? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries for approval. The agenda, item 5 is the consent agenda. As you see on there, we have approval of the minutes, approval of travel documents, travel requests, approval of personnel action notices, and approval of the human services report. Is there a motion to approve?
So move.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any comments?
Mr. Chair, I would
Yes.
like to request that we remove the approval of personnel action notices from the consent agenda and put it in our executive session for discussion.
Amendment's been made to change the consent agenda to remove item C, personal action notices. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, we'll vote on the amendment. All those in, we'll do a roll call on that.
Pierce?
Yes.
Boersma?
Aye.
Krogman?
Aye.
Jensen?
Aye.
Bartley?
Aye.
Amendment carries.
All right, we're back to the main motion with consent agenda with all the items except for item C. Any other discussion? We'll call the roll on the agenda items as amended.
Boersma?
Aye.
Krogman?
Aye.
Jensen?
Aye.
Pierce?
Aye.
Bartley?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Item 6 is routine business, approval of the claims. We have the claims, the December cell phones, WageWorks accounting setup, and First Bank and Trust bond payment accounts. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any comments or questions?
One note I did hand out this morning, there was, on the cell phone reimbursement, there was one that was removed due to a resignation. That was handed out this morning.
Duly noted. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, we'll call the roll.
Krogman?
Aye.
Jensen?
Aye.
Pierce?
Aye.
Boersma?
Aye.
Bartley?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Item B is department head reports. And today we have some special guests. And Sonia, we're going to let you take the podium and introduce your guests and give us your report. This is the 4-H report. I've got plenty of chairs. You can all come up.
Plenty of chairs. They're all gone from the back. I kind of felt like I was getting moved closer to the altar for church this morning. Good morning. First, before I bring up my couple 4-H members and volunteer to give a brief presentation about their trip to Kansas City the end of October, I'll bring you up to speed on things in the 4-H world. The new year did get underway October 1, and the most recent number I saw for our 4-H enrollment was very close to 300, if not just a little more than. So we're really doing well on our re-enrollments and new enrollments for this year, as we're a solid 2 months into the newest part of our year. Our shooting sport registration kicked off right before Thanksgiving, and 4-H shooting sports will get started on the 4th of January. We held a safety training for those first and second year shooters that are involved in BB gun, air rifle, and air pistol on Saturday. 2 separate sessions to accommodate as many as possible, and we'll be doing some proctored tests over the next few weeks before they get started. We have 2 lines of BB gun, 2 lines of air pistol, 2 lines of air rifle, 4 lines of archery, 3 .22 rifle, and 2 .22 pistol lines. We've been working really hard this past week to rearrange and accommodate those kids that are on waiting lists. We did some adjusting to our schedule this year to try to maximize the volunteers' effort with minimizing their commitment as far as growing the line numbers of BB gun, for example, so that we could accommodate 20 at a time versus and letting that volunteer in and out in less than 2 hours probably versus committing their entire morning. And so we've rearranged some things this year. We have had at least a half dozen new shooting sport volunteers that have been trained and are ready to be of assistance on their respective discipline lines when things get started in January. And so we're looking forward to a good year. We also incorporated this year into the BB gun line that'll be taking place on Sunday afternoon, the opportunity for participation in the Daisy competition. Their line is being offered on Sunday afternoon because Daisy BB gun competitions across the state take place on Saturday. So this way the coaches were able to still be involved without missing starting, mid-February or whatever. And those kids have that opportunity to find an additional shooting opportunity without missing their weekly practice. And those kids in that BB gun line with the Daisy focus have more time allotted for their practice because they will be getting additional safety education as a result of participation in Daisy competitions. There's also a safety test and knowledge test at every competition. So that is a new feature as a part of our program this year. That line is full, and we have some excited volunteers and a waiting list for that line as well. So things for that are looking good. Robotics is going to get started here in January as well. And we're kicking that off at the end of the year on the 30th of December with a 4-H Science Day, sort of kind of an introduction, not necessarily to robotics, but just kind of a kickoff into that STEM project that will allow kids to use the 2019 National Youth Science Day activity, which was called Game Changers, and I'm not well versed in it yet to share much. So we have our volunteers from that robotics program helping to lead that. Speaking of robotics and shooting sports, we're looking to use some of our budget dollars out of our project line to purchase a 3D printer for our robotics group. The extension board earlier this spring, when developing the 2020 budget, really wanted us to focus on using that project line money towards our STEM programming. And the shooting sports folks are looking for something to be used on a, what's that thing that goes around your arm? The sling. And they can't find it, but someone said, if you have a 3D printer, and I said, we're looking to get one. So might be a real interesting way for our project volunteers to combine their skills and their needs to help each other out. So kind of looking forward to that. Before I turn the microphone over to the young ladies and gentlemen behind me, are there any questions for me?
Any questions? Oh, thank you.
At this time, I would like to introduce and invite to the microphone 4-H members Emily Nold and Liberty Thompson and their volunteer coach, Rob Zielinski.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I just wanted to explain a little bit about the activity you funded for the Brookings County 4-H livestock judging team. It's a contest that is a statewide contest. The kids have to, at the state contest, have to place first or second as a team to qualify for either a national contest in Kansas City or the national contest in Louisville. This team was second this year, so we qualified for Kansas City. The good news is that all 4 of these team members, plus we've got 7 more underneath them, are all going to be back next year. So not only do I think we can have a very competitive team for Kansas City, I hope that we can overcome second and maybe be a little bit more competitive. Not putting too much pressure on these young ladies at all, but they are extremely talented. If you look at them from a sports perspective, an academic perspective, and an extracurricular perspective, these kids are involved in everything, and they excel at it. So I want to personally thank you guys and gals for giving us the funds to help make that trip possible. It was very well invested. They represented Brookings County, South Dakota extremely well, both inside the competition and outside. So I just wanted to take time to thank you for that, and hopefully we're back here in front of you again next year. We'll give it over to Emily Nold and Liberty Thompson to talk to you about their results, but once again, we thank you very much for your support.
Thank you. Young ladies, a microphone for each of you.
So like you said, I'm Emily Nold,
And I'm Liberty Thompson.
and we just wanted to thank you for helping us fund the trip to go to Kansas City. It was definitely a good trip for us. We spent a lot of time practicing with Rob, and we spent some time on the road around South Dakota, and then, like you said, we went to the state contest and ended up placing second. And then after the contest, we tried to get together to work on it more. Throughout the contest, we really use different skills like decision-making, critical thinking, analyzing data, both genetic and phenotypic, to place these classes of 4 animals in the way that we see best fit. And then we also give sets of reasons on them, so we're basically defending our opinion, how we think that they should be placed, and we're giving these sets of reasons to professionals who know exactly how they are placed by the judge, and just explaining how we see the class. So it also has helped us with our communication, public speaking, and just really being able to analyze different things and be confident in it, and defend ourselves. So thank you.
Yeah, and then also, since we are the first Brookings team in over a decade, it is an amazing opportunity for us to be able to go out and not only represent Brookings County, but South Dakota as a whole. And placing second at that state, we were able to represent South Dakota at the American Royal in Kansas City. And at Kansas City, we ended up placing 7th at a national competition as a team. And that is, as South Dakota, I think last year's team placed about 13th. And so this is the best South Dakota has ever placed at a national competition for livestock judging. So thank you again for this opportunity. I think we're really excited to come back harder and stronger next year.
Well, thank you. Is there any questions for these young ladies?
I just want to say the two of you really represent the best of Brookings County, and thank you for what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll let you get back to school because you'll be back next year with a better report for us.
Because they missed too much school already. And we want them to graduate.
Yeah, thank you. We'll
Thank
be
you for
looking
coming.
forward to your report next year. Thank you. All right, we'll continue on with our department head reports. Brian, we'll let you go next with our highway department.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, the 26th seemed to be my busy day this last couple weeks. Got our second or third snowfall of the season there, and it happened to fall right over Thanksgiving. I feel we did a fairly good job with the holidays and juggling that around to get the snow and the ice off the road, and then we had a little bit of help with Mother Nature, so that was welcomed. Then the 26th also was Randy Ribstein's last day with the highway department, and also had a I-29 overpass meeting with the city of Brookings and HDR. On December 2nd, I spoke with John down there talking in regards to the bridges, and they're continuing to work down there. They're having to house most all their concrete pours, so we can be expecting to see a CCO on that. I have not seen anything yet, but that's something that we're gonna have to be looking at in the future. And also, one of the things that I've been working on pretty hard the last few weeks is the 2020 overlay project. I've had Dan review the EJCDC documents and agreements with Clark and what we'll be advertising for bid. We have this last week for bid opening on Tuesday, January 14th at 10 a.m.
Any questions for Brian? Hearing none. Thank you, Brian.
You bet.
Marty, the Sheriff's Department report.
Good morning.
Marty?
As always, just like other departments, we keep busy. At the present time, we have 44 inmates in jail. We have two, actually we have 46, but two are in Falk County. We brought one back Monday, and I think he pled out, and are going to. We're full. The women's cell is full. I'm over 2 in capacity right now when it comes to the women's cell. So we may have to transport some more to Fulton County as we go on. They really hit us on weekends, and staff does a good job. I can't commend our staff for the job they do and how busy it gets. Also, we just got an inmate back. We had an inmate in Yankton for 72 days, and that's probably one of the longest. So you know there was a problem when Yankton keeps them for 72 days. Now, the problem is that she needs lab every Monday, and the nurses rescheduled her, so she's coming in. She's able to come in, and we got it worked out with the hospital. She's able to do the lab work at the jail and then take it up to the hospital. So that saves transportation and that type of stuff. Also, she's court-ordered to take a $5,000 shot. Okay, the nurse has worked and brought that cost down to $2,000. We're trying to figure out if we can get somebody else to pay for that. But she's a resident of California. But since she's been charged out of Brookings County, I don't think California is going to pick up any tab for anything. So, I think state's attorney's working on that a little bit. He's smiling anyway. So, anyway, but what's nice is that she's able to do the lab in-house. And she's got it worked out with the hospital and so forth. Also in the jail, Sean is working with us. I'd like to go to a scheduling program after the first of the year, and it's called When I Work. It's the same thing as the hospital does for the nurses. And it's getting to be that we got so much staff, part-time people, it's hard to keep track and open shifts and things like this. So I think it's going to be a little cost for us, but I think I can absorb that. I know I'll be able to absorb that in my budget. So it's not an enormous cost for that, but it's going to really reduce phone calls and stuff in the jail. Also, working with Vicki is that I'll be working with our nurse and also Bart to try to get a handle on our bills, where we're at with the bills with Sioux Falls, with the baby that was born and so forth. And I just to kind of keep you a track of what's going on, I gave you a sheet of, when the individual was in Sioux Falls that had the baby that's incarcerated, I had to put a 24-hour guard on that person, and that was the cost of what it took down there. And you could tell that it was employee intent, or having employees down there and running 24-hour guard. What's sad about this whole thing is that, some of these employees didn't get to eat. Now, Bart had checked down there, and they were going to supply a meal for us. Sometimes they didn't do it, and the guard didn't want to ask for it. And so I got to commend my staff for sitting there and guarding for 12 hours and not eating. So that was, it's hard enough to be down there, and then you don't get to eat or they can't take a break because you got to be in the room all the time, and they go to the lab, you got to follow them to the lab and so forth. So what I had Bart do is call down to Minnehaha County. And if this ever happens again, the jail commander in Minnehaha said is if we can give them notice, that they would be willing to put a guard at the hospital, and then we just reimburse their wages. And that might be a better deal, because I had guards going down there in their own cars because I didn't have enough cars and so forth. And it's a good thing this doesn't happen all the time, but for the future, might be able to cut down some of that cost by just supplying, paying Minnehaha for a guard at the hospital if this ever happens again. So that's nice of them too, and then that will help for next time. The other thing I'm working with Oak Lake Township is I received complaints of violation of open meeting laws, et cetera, and then I forward them to Dan Nelson, who'll be looking at that. And Dan's kind of stuck with this because by statute it says the state's attorney is the one that reviews these and decides if there's a case to prosecute, and then it can go on to the Attorney General's office and then to the Open Meetings Commission. So that's going to be interesting. And I think in Aberdeen last week, they just had, the Attorney General was in Aberdeen and gave a talk about the involvement of state's attorneys and townships, because townships across the state are having issues with open meeting laws, and it's finally, you can't shoot at the hip anymore and just post it on a pole in the middle of the township anymore. You got to follow the law like everybody else. And he just had a seminar there for that. So it's not just here; it's other places too. I guess that's also after the first of the year by the union contract. I can try to relieve some of Bart's pressure on weekend calls, is that the jail staff, the 2 other deputies will also go on call on weekends. And if they can't take call, then the assistant sheriff and myself will take call for that weekend. We usually take call too anyway. I guess I get calls every weekend on something, and Bart really gets bombarded on calls on weekends. So if you have any questions, about anything? I think I've covered everything.
Any questions? Commissioner Pierce.
The 2 inmates, the one that was on the 72-hour hold in Yankton, and then the one that was in the hospital for the baby, were those 2 inmates, was that pre-conviction or post-conviction?
Those are pre.
They're both pre-conviction. Okay. And on that 72-hour hold, I just don't remember this. When somebody's on a 72-hour hold, is that coming out of your budget, or is that coming out of a different budget?
That comes out of a different budget. She's down there for 72 days. That comes out of a different
days.
budget.
Yeah.
Comes out of mental health.
Comes out of, okay. I couldn't remember
If she
which
wasn't
budget.
incarcerated, if she was just off the street, which we do get, then we can get that state or that county to help pay for that. But since she's incarcerated, of course, California's not going to pick up any tab.
Okay. That comes out of Mike's office, is that right, his budget?
No, I think it goes straight. Does it come out of Mike?
Behavioral health budget?
I don't know
Okay.
who does the vouchers. I
Okay,
guess. Yeah.
thanks.
Any other questions for Marty? If not, thank you.
Okay.
Vicki with Finance Department. We'll take your report.
Good morning.
Good morning.
To give you an idea of what we've been doing, we are having our delinquent taxes are being published this week in all the local papers, and so that leaves us to the tax certificate auction that we will be having the 16th next Monday at 9 o'clock. So we will be selling all the taxes to investors to get paid and send out the money to the schools and cities. And still working on budget, met with Stacy a few times, and also different department heads. We do have a contingency transfer later on the agenda today, and we will still be working with departments to make sure that we are going to be in the black with all their budgets. So we may have some contingencies for next time too. And one of the state auditors came back yesterday. They got done at USD, so we have auditors back. So just one at this time, so we'll see if we get any more. And we did get the levies approved for the townships and the cities but there's still overlapping school districts that haven't been approved yet from other counties. So we're still going to probably have to wait a week or two for those to get done. So we're moving forward with that. So that's pretty much what we have going on. Any questions?
Any questions for Vicki?
Thank you.
Hearing none, thank you. Let's see, we've got a couple minutes. We have a new clock, and it looks like it's extremely accurate for a change. So we have 3 minutes before our 9 o'clock report. Misty, can you do this in 3 minutes? And Misty, with our weed department, will come up and give her a report. Bob, we're going to make you wait.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So I have a couple things. DOT for our fall run, we will be receiving a check for $12,516.75. That's to cover our chemical costs, labor for spraying DOT roads. And then townships, I have 4 townships left yet to pay for their fall run. I'm going to send letters out to them today, see if I can't get them to get that money in on this year instead of next year. A lot of the times it does end up being, they send it in January after we've closed our books for this year. Just an FYI, Gophers, our Gopher sign up, we had 16 townships sign up, and I've only gotten 3 townships numbers back. I'm thinking it's Gopher's numbers were down, and they weren't expecting the weather like we had, so.
They couldn't swim.
They can't swim, they all drowned it out, or they went to higher ground. Also, one last thing, I just wrote up a list of duties that I do in the office in the winter time, just to give everybody an idea of what I do. I'm not gonna go through the whole list, but if anybody has any questions, you know, I can answer them. And this is not on a day-to-day basis. This is as things come up. So it's it's not a scheduled list. It's just what we could possibly be doing day by day. So just an FYI. Otherwise, that is all I have.
All right, any questions?
Just one, last year you were real active in the township meeting. Is that something you do every year?
Yes, and in fact, I will be meeting with Terry Pritchard to go over the speakers, the times on Friday. We're gonna set that up, and then she'll have to present that to her board. So
I don't recall us ever having a session at the township meeting on open meeting laws. And I wonder if that might be something that might be helpful on their agenda for the spring, and maybe Dan could help in some manner with that. But I'm just throwing that out based on what was said earlier about the township we have that's having the difficulty.
Okay, any other questions? Not, thank you, Misty.
thanks.
Move on to item 7, our scheduled agenda items. 9 o'clock, we have a public hearing on a supplemental budget resolution. Is there a motion to approve the budget resolution? It's a resolution number 19-54.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. I'm going to open the public hearing. Is there anyone here that would like to address our supplemental budget resolution? Speak now, or you won't have a chance. Anyone here would like to talk? If not, I'll close the public hearing. Any comments from the board? Any comments?
So I think Vicki and I have maybe discussed this with you, both of these items with you at previous meetings. The first is for the 24/7 program. That is its own separate fund. The money in that fund has to be used for 24/7 program needs, supplies, salaries, things of that nature. So what we're doing is using fund balance within that fund to supplement their 2019 budget to cover expenses that have occurred in 2019 so far. The second part is in the general fund, and it's just coming out of our unassigned fund balance for, and that's going into our township projects line. We'd had $100,000 to start. We did the culvert program, and then if you recall at the first meeting in November, the board authorized payment of that extra 25% of the FEMA estimate to be granted as a grant to townships that basically responded to a letter that Mike and I developed and sent out. So in order to cover those additional costs, we're supplementing that budget line.
Okay. Any questions? No questions? We'll call the roll.
Jensen,
Aye.
Pierce,
Aye.
Boersma,
Aye.
Krogman,
Aye.
Bartley.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Move on to item B, our 905 public hearing on the Brookings County Pre-Disaster Mitigation Plan for 2019 through 2024. Is there a motion to approve?
So move. Second.
Motion been made and seconded, and we'll open the public hearing first. Anybody would like to speak on this disaster mitigation plan? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing, and Mr. Hill will let you do an explanation for us for our
Yes.
comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The pre-disaster mitigation plan was last done 5 years ago. It's required to be updated every 5 years by the Federal Emergency Management Agency. They provide us a grant to do it. Once this has all the approvals by all the local municipalities in Brookings County to include this board, then we will be able to apply for a grant to reimburse us on the cost of the actual plan itself. This plan gives us a blueprint of what we expect to require assistance with over the next 5 years. And we've had local meetings at every small municipality. It's listed in the back of the book. And the goal is, in case something goes on, that we apply for federal disaster funds. It's covered in the book here, and then we can use this as a blueprint to apply for mitigation funds. After every FEMA disaster, there's a pool of mitigation dollars available to the state of South Dakota. And after that occurs, then we can apply. In this instance, right now, there's 2 different mitigation things going on in Brookings County, one by the city of Brookings, and the other one by Madera Township is being investigated at the state level. So it's just basically a blueprint that if we don't have the plan in place, then FEMA just turns around and goes to a county that does have a pre-disaster mitigation plan in place. And this one was vetted. We hired First Planning District to do it for us. They held meetings in all the small towns. I attended what meetings I could when they had them. And we believe it's a good plan. We asked each local community, what's your major issue? And that's what's put into the book under that municipality.
Any questions?
Can you just kind of give us an idea what those major issues were? Or?
Well, flooding. I mean, basically what a pre-disaster mitigation plan. I wrote the very first one back in 2003. And what you do is you take a snapshot of your community for the last 100 years or so. And obviously, number one is the flooding issues and you got all the named tributaries, Madera Creek and 6 Mile Creek and the Big Sioux River, et.cetera. And then the next one would have been high winds with the tornadoes. We've had a series of tornadoes over the last 100 years. But flooding is the main focus that we can see right now at this stage.
Thank you.
Ma'am.
Any other questions? Hearing none. Any comments? Not, we'll call the roll.
Pierce,
Aye.
Boersma,
Aye.
Krogman,
Aye.
Jensen,
Aye.
Bartley.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bob, you can stay right where you're at. We got 5 minutes for your report.
Let me grab mine.
Okay, I'll let you get your report. Okay, thank you.
Okay, November 21st, we had a local emergency planning committee meeting held at Daktronics. It was well attended. During that meeting, we had a vote to apply for our annual local emergency planning committee grant, and that paperwork has been submitted. December 2nd, Richard gave a conditional use permitting class to SDSU. One of the professors over at SDSU wanted to give a class and wanted to know how Brookings County does their conditional use permits, so Richard went over there and gave him a class on what we do. December 2nd, we had a planning meeting. It was a joint meeting with the City of Brookings Planning Commission, and it was on a rezoning. And then after that, we had a briefing conducted by First Planning District on the joint jurisdiction ordinance. And we've got a blueprint of how we're going forward over the next 5 months. We're going to meet as a joint board, both the city and county together on the ordinance. And then at the end of that, then we will sit there and start doing the city council and county commission will meet. So we expect some movement, hopefully by June, July. We're hoping we can get this thing starting to move. And you will see in January, Ms. Stephenson has the information on the meeting on the actual rezoning itself. Those are going to have to be joint meetings between the city council and the county commission, and she'll have the dates and times on those. December 3rd, FEMA held their public assistance meeting in this room. We brought in all 11 townships, and city of Elkton, city of Aurora was here. They held a public assistance meeting. They get that ball rolling on getting the townships and the municipal governments repaid for their disasters. December 3rd, we had the ag banquet. December 5th, we had a winter weather outlook known as a blizzard meeting for Region 6. It was held in Mitchell. I had Richard attend that meeting, and once again, surprisingly, they're calling for snow this winter, and the roads will be closed when they do, so typical meeting. December 6th, on Friday, Richard went up to Watertown, attended a Dakota Rural Action meeting on, they welcome people that give permits for CAFO type facilities, and they have a meeting once a year. I went to the one in Mitchell last year. Richard went to the one in Watertown this year. And yesterday, I visited the Disaster Recovery Center, which is located at the Brookings Research and Technology Center. And that brings me up to my last thing, which I've got a minute. Right now, as of today, we've got a Disaster Recovery Center over at the Brookings Research and Technology Center. It is open from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. It will be there from today, December 10th, all the way to December 14th. If anyone has any issues with the flooding event from September 9 to 26, regardless of where you're at in the county, if you had water in your basement and problems with the flooding, visit the building. It's over next to the Swift Health Center. It's not the big Swift Health Center. It's that little government building next to it. And they got a big bus out in front that says FEMA on the bus. Go on over on that door, the northern door, and visit them. I stopped by yesterday. And along with that, we got another press release sent out late last night, and it says FEMA can assist with furnaces, wells, and septic systems. Now, this particular flooding incident, we had a lot of septic systems go under because of overwhelming of municipal sewer facilities and infrastructure inside the town. So if you had any issues with your furnaces, wells, and septic systems from the flooding event of September 9 through 26, once again, please stop by there. Even if it's already done, as long as you got your receipts for what was fixed, FEMA will take a look at it and provide what assistance they can. Any questions?
Any questions for Bob? None. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You did that very quickly. All right, we're going to move on to item C, 910, presentation of anniversary certificates. Commissioner Krogman will do the honor to present the certificates. First up, we're going to take the equipment fabricator welder Dennis Miller with 20 years of experience. Dennis, would you please come up? Commissioner Krogman will present your award.
Congratulations. Dennis is with the Brookings County Highway Department, 20 years with Brookings County. So thank you very much. Thank you.
For your picture. Second, whichever one you want. Let's go with IT support specialist Sean Paulman with 5 years.
Okay, Sean, you want to come on up here? Sean's with the Brookings County Commission Department, and again, is IT specialist for us here at the building. And it is invaluable. Thank you. Been here for 5 years.
And GIS technician Jim Sampson, 5 years in December.
Jim is with the Brookings County Commission Department, GIS a technician for us, and we appreciate all your work. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. All right, we appreciate all your service, and it's just a small certificate suitable for framing, but we appreciate your sticking with the county, especially when you're equipment fabricator and welder for 20 years. You deserve a bigger certificate, but that's the size it comes. Maybe you can weld a frame for it and Hang it in the shop out there. That'd be good. All right. Item 8 is our regular business. Thank you again. Item A is action to approve resolution number 19-56, adoption of the 2020 annual budget for Brookings County, South Dakota, and amending resolution number 19-42. Is there a motion to approve?
So move.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any comments? Any explanation on this?
The original resolution had the county levy dollars listed for both general fund and county building fund weren't correct. The levy in that resolution was correct, but just an error, and I'll own it, just a typo. So we need to get the right numbers in the resolution printed, approved, and printed in the minutes. So that's amending that initial resolution back in September.
All right, so the action is approving it as amended.
Approving this resolution, which in turn amends that, the resolution 1942.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, we'll call the roll.
Boersma?
Aye.
Krogman?
Aye.
Jensen?
Aye.
Pierce?
Aye.
Bartley?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Item B is an action to approve resolution number 19-57, a contingency transfer resolution. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any comments or explanations?
Vicki and I met for our first round of looking at everyone's budgets, preparing for year end. These are the budget lines at this time that we felt that needed some contingency. Vicki and I will be looking at this again in the weeks to come. You will see another contingency resolution, but we wanted to get this money done and transferred so we kind of knew where we were at when we get a little bit closer to year end, to make sure that there was nothing else that was specifically needed for these items, but it just kind of gives us a clearer picture if we do this initial one now.
Any other comments or questions? Commissioner Pierce?
What is the balance that's in contingency right now?
We had not spent any of it, so it was 623, is that right? Yeah, something like that, yeah. And we hadn't spent any yet this year.
Question?
Bob, in emergency management, the 48,000, is that for the repeaters?
Yes, it is, sir. For the repeaters and the programming to make the repeaters work.
Thank you.
That was a job that we had to get done, and I hope it's all functional at this point in time. We're still doing testing on it, and we may have to do a little bit more maybe next year.
The Bruce and the white communications problem, as far as we can determine, has been rectified. We are still monitoring the one over in Oakland.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
I just have a question for Marty. I understand why prisoner rations are up, but salaries, why was there so much, we were so short on salaries for budget purposes? Any thoughts?
Adding more staff to cover. Anytime I'm over 31 inmates, the chances of something happening or whatever in the jail rises. So then I staff it. You know, policy says when somebody is moved out of their cell, it takes two. Well, who's in the control room when they're both out on the floor? So that has a lot to do with it, because of I'm overcrowded, and I want to make sure my staff is safe, and I want to make sure the inmates are safe. So that has a lot to do with it. You can't predict. I have 10 more inmates per day than I had last year. You know, Dan Nelson just talked about it at Rotary, and the deal was with methamphetamine and the seriousness of methamphetamine causing more violent crimes. I have more violent people in jail than I used to, so I'm going to staff it to keep everyone safe. So that has a lot to do with it.
So for next year's budget, had you taken into consideration the shortage we had this year, or are we going to be short again next year?
Probably be short next year, depending on Stacy and Vicki work what I spent this year, and then they probably increase it a couple percentages or whatever. But again, it's a lot of unknowns when it comes to the jail.
Thank you.
Yeah, the budget too was set back, we did those budget hearings back in May, June, and not knowing where we would be completely at year end. So it's kind of a best guess when we're going through that. I do visit with BART, and we try to come up with a percentage for hours for part-time staff, but a lot of times it's just kind of what we think is best at the time, and things change throughout the year.
A lot of it has to do with transporting to Yankton, transporting to Sioux Falls, transportation costs, those types of things. It's a lot of unknowns when it comes to the jail, per week. And then with the increase of 10 inmates, we kind of going by, when we do the food budget, we try to look at the increase of food that Hy-Vee has for the new contract, and we try to go up a little bit, but then again, we don't know how many inmates. We didn't plan on 10 over. We were kind of basing it on last year's daily population and increased it a little bit, but we didn't plan on 10 more, so that has.
Any other questions? Not, we'll call the roll.
Krogman?
Aye.
Jensen?
Aye.
Pierce?
Aye.
Boersma?
Aye.
Bartley?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Item C is action to approve resolution number 19-58, a bridge improvement grant program resolution authorizing submission of applications. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Comments? Brian, any comments on this?
This is the Bruce Bridge that we talked about earlier this year. It's in the five-year plan. 5-year plan.
Okay. Any other questions?
So we're offering, what's our deadline? Is this for next year's group of bridges and stuff like that?
Correct.
Okay,
So this would be for 2021.
grant stuff. Is this the only bridge that we're going to submit for? Okay.
Yes.
And I think we have a limit of dollars that we're kind of short anyway because.
And with this match, we would stay under that dollar figure.
Okay.
If we were to go any lower, we'd, like at 20%, then we'd be over our figure.
Right, so this will keep us under the figure, allow us to do at least one more bridge.
Yes.
Coming years. Anything for preservation grants or anything like that? Are we going to submit anything for those or
We submitted those in August.
Okay.
And we submitted 8 and we were awarded 7.
Right, but I didn't know if we were needing to do that again for next year coming forward.
Yep, we will be doing that again this August.
Okay. Just a reminder, those preservation grants count against our dollar value too?
Yes, they do.
They do, okay. So, all right.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Commissioner Pierce.
I know this isn't directly related, but I just remembered I wanted to ask this. At the egg banquet, a citizen asked me how many small structures we have that are still on the list that need to be replaced. Do you know that number by any chance?
We're working on that, and that's one of the parts of the puzzle that I'm working, as we move forward with completing a lot of our larger structures that are over the Sioux River, we're going to get to the point to where we're going to have to look at doing more smaller projects to equal up to the amount that we're spending on these larger projects. So that is one of the things I'm looking at doing. And I've been meeting with Banner quite extensively on that too, because I feel that's something that our budget can afford, is some of these smaller structures like you're talking, Vicki, or Leanne, is that we're looking at taking on more of those smaller ones and not applying for any of the grant funding.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, we'll call the roll.
Jensen?
Aye.
Pierce?
Aye.
Boersma?
Aye.
Krogman?
Aye.
Bartley?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Item D is an action to remove agreement number 19-79 and a very e-care telehealth professional services agreement from the table. Is there a motion to remove from the table?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. All in favor of moving it from the table, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. It's removed from the table. The action is to approve agreement number 19-79 and a very e-care telehealth professional services agreement, behavioral health mobile crisis, between a very e-care LLC and Brookings County. It's now on the table. Any comments? Any updates?
Yeah, so I sent this to the Assurance Alliance, just our insurance provider for the county. They looked this over, and the most substantial changes, if you flip to page 4, it's 7.1.4. This is the language, that entire paragraph is the language that they inserted There was the previous language called for $5 million. We backed that down to $2 million, and then they checked off on this completely. And then if we turn over to page 5, 7.2, their language initially had any and all disputes. We just changed that out to only actions arising from this agreement. We changed that out in both those two sentences dealing with that. Other than that, there wasn't any material changes that were offered by the Alliance. So from our standpoint, and I haven't really sat down with either Commissioner Boersma or Pierce regarding their input on this, or the Sheriff's Office, but from an insurance perspective, this is good to go. So.
And I did hand out an updated version of this. It was sitting on your desks this morning. We received this back from Avera late in the day yesterday, so so that updated agreement was handed out.
All right. Thank you. Any other comments? I would note that a motion was made by Commissioner Boersma, seconded by Commissioner Pierce, to approve the agreement at the 11/19/2019 Commission meeting. Are there any other comments or questions on this? Do we want some comments from Marty? Or where are we at with the Sheriff's Department? You all right?
So we got this back from Avera, so they're okay with it then too?
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions for anyone? I'll even ask Bart. You're happy with this one, Bart? I know you did a lot of work on it. Okay. With that, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. We are now going to have telehealth care through the Sheriff's Department and the jail. Is that correct? So that everybody understands where we're using this. Okay. Item E is an action to approve Agreement 19-80, a small enterprise agreement, county and municipality government between Brookings County and Environmental System Research Institute, Inc., or commonly known as ESRI. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Comments or explanations?
Sean, are you available to come out? Sean provided a staff report on this. This has been a joint venture between the city, the county, as well as Brookings Municipal Utilities. As Sean comes forward, he has been a part of those discussions and answer questions.
Well, and this is, so in this agreement, the county is the contracting entity. The agreement is going to be with the county. And this is just a software licensing agreement. It drastically increases the number of licenses that the county will have access to. It does increase our cost by about, well, under $6,000 per year. But if we were to go about this by ourselves without including BMU and the city in it, our cost would end up being about $35,000 a year for the same number of licenses that we're looking at here. So even if we don't utilize it all up front and we wait 10 years, yeah, we spent an extra $60,000, but if we started using all of that, any savings would be gone in 3 years.
Okay. Any questions? Commissioner Krogman?
Since it's over 6,000 more, are you able to, for the budget for next year?
I budgeted for this for next year.
You did?
Yes.
With the increase in the 6,000?
Yes, okay. With the increase. This was an anticipated thing that we've been discussing with BMU and the city for a while.
Okay, so this is the next step in trying to make that process work with GIS, is this agreement? Because it gives you the extra licenses to make it work?
Yeah, well, and what it would do is get us all on the same platform together. It would, I believe the way it was suggested was that we wanted to be driving the bus if we went forward with the project. This is about as close as we're going to get because all of our data is going to remain independent. So we're going to be sharing a road, but each of us has our own car.
Okay.
And then it will it will allow us to share data without having to double enter some things. If, for example, if Jim makes an adjustment to something, the city's GIS person wouldn't need to make that change because they'd be able to pull in the data that Jim created.
Looks like a good cooperative effort.
Yes.
I know we've had data back and forth that, well, isn't current, and there were always issues of who could update the information without updating everybody else's. So I think this is probably the right way to go.
Yep. And I believe in 2020, the city will be adding their own GIS department, which will help quite a bit as well.
Okay. Good. Any other questions? Hearing none. We'll call the roll.
Pierce?
Aye.
Boersma?
Aye.
Krogman?
Aye.
Jensen?
Aye.
Bartley?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Sean. You're probably on item F also. Item F is action to approve agreement number 19-81, an enterprise software cost share agreement between Brookings County, the City of Brookings, and Brookings municipal utilities. Is there a motion to approve?
So move.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Now we'll have a report on this one.
This is just the cost-sharing agreement. The annual cost is $40,000. We're breaking it up by thirds. All the licensing is broken up exactly by thirds as well. The additional penny that the county paid, will end up paying is insignificant.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, we'll call the roll.
Boersma?
Aye.
Krogman?
Aye.
Jensen?
Aye.
Pierce?
Aye.
Bartley?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Item G is an action to approve agreement number 19-82, an agreement for general law enforcement services between Brookings County and the City of White, South Dakota. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second? Motion been made and seconded. Any comments?
Marty stepped out.
Yeah, he did.
The only change that I noted was that they reduced their hours from 40 to 30. Was the only thing that I was aware of. So I don't know
Any
if we want
questions or
to,
comments?
if Marty, is he just out in the hallway?
He's walking in the door now.
Oh, perfect. We'll bombard him when he walks in. Here he comes. He's trying to be so quiet.
You don't
and
have to be
stealthy.
quiet, Marty. You can come right up
Your
and
law
answer
enforcement
questions.
agreement is up. The agreement with the City of White is on the table right now.
We're asking for your comments.
No, just, I have to apologize to Commissioner Krogman, because when he asked me at one point, it's 40 down to 30, not 30 to 20. I apologize. I can make up the difference of the $5,000 in revenue. So.
Okay. Any other questions?
Marty, was there any concerns from the bank or the school on this matter?
No, I heard it from a couple of citizens that were going to go to the council, but I haven't heard any feedback about that. I've only visited with the auditor, the white auditor, and she said the reason for the reduction was that they're building or want to build a new fire hall, and they wanted to save some money for that. For the extra 10 hours, I can use that elsewhere, in the county. So I'm not really too concerned about the hours. He just said we're going to be losing about $5,000 in revenue, but I have a part-time deputy. I can cut him back a little bit and then make up that $5,000. So I don't see that as an issue. A couple other communities wanted to raise theirs, and the city of Volga is getting large enough that they contract for 60 hours. They may want to contract for 80 hours in the future. And then the city of Elkton has talked about increasing hours there too. So the work is there, and it's all about money too. It's everybody can use more law enforcement, it seems like, but sometimes it's tough to pay for law enforcement, as we all know, so.
So this is a request from the city of White to reduce the hours, correct?
Right.
Not from you saying it'll have the
Right.
manpower, okay?
Yeah. So they just, like I say, they want to use that money to help towards their fire hall.
Thank you, Sheriff. Any other questions? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Item H is an action to approve agreement number 19-83, a lease renewal agreement between Brookings County and Denville Management. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Comments on the agreement? This is for the Community Health Services space.
This is our lease agreement for the Community Health Office down on Main Avenue South. This is a 2-year agreement with Denville Management. It is going up. The last agreement was for $8.95 per month, but they did charge for trash and groundskeeping, which averaged about $90 per month. So now the new contract is for $960 a month. That's a $65 per month increase. So potentially it might be even to our benefit because we were paying a little bit more than that for the trash and the grounds. So my recommendation would be for approval.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
How about staff there from the Community Health Services? Are there any complaints or any concerns about space, size?
No, we had some discussion about some of the parking lot upkeep, but I think that was addressed already with Denville. Otherwise, no complaints about the space. And we do lease some space there as well, if you recall, that we get some revenue back on each month.
And that's what I guess my question was, because this is a 2-year lease. And so if we anticipate outgrowing it, we don't want to sign a 2-year lease. We'd want to sign a 1-year lease, but.
I don't see that. They haven't asked for any additional staffing or anything that would indicate that they are outgrowing that space. It's, if they started talking about, if I started hearing that or started hearing about the need for additional staff, then I think that would be the time to maybe have that discussion with them if that space is significant. But like I said, they're also leasing out we're leasing out an office space. And so I think that would maybe be the first thing to not do if they're run out of space, is take that space back. So I think there's some options there.
Do you know when that lease, that's with the state of South Dakota, right?
It is. It's just a perpetual ongoing lease until
Month to month,
until one of us needs to move on.
Any further questions? Hearing none, we'll call the roll.
Krogman?
Aye.
Jensen?
Aye.
Pierce?
Aye.
Boersma?
Aye.
Bartley?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Next item is an action to approve the renewal of the liquor license for Meadow Creek Golf Club, effective January 1st, 2020 through December 31st of 2020. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any comments?
No violations, and
Yep.
taxes are all current, so.
That is correct. And Brookings County currently holds 7 liquor licenses, and at your last meeting, you guys approved 6 licenses. So this Meadow Creek Golf course has applied for this application. So.
And they're the ones that previously had it before. That
Correct.
Just didn't get in the first round.
Yep, that is correct.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Approved. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Item J is an action to approve or to appoint Michael Holhauser to a 4-year term as Brookings County Veteran Service Officer to run from January 7th, 2020 to January 1st of 2024. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Comments? Mike's not here, so Commissioner Pierce, you look like you want to make a comment.
I was going to propose that we put this on our next agenda because I have a couple questions for Mike and would like him to be able to address those. But now that we have a motion pending,
You can make a motion to table till the next meeting.
I'd like to make a motion to table this to the next meeting and have Mike present so we could ask him some questions about long-term planning and
Is there
those
a
kinds of
second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded to table. It's not debatable. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion's tabled. And we'll let Mike know that. Item K is an action to declare a 2006 Dodge Durango as surplus property to sell via online auction. Is there a motion to approve?
So move.
Second?
Motion made and seconded. Any comments or questions?
I just had a question. Marty, how are you sitting on vehicles right now?
I'm one down, but I got, just received a check for insurance that they totaled it. And so I would be able to purchase a new vehicle with the insurance check. So I went ahead and ordered that replacement vehicle along with two. Then we were going to rotate two vehicles out. So actually I went with Einsfar that came under state bid and went with pickups. Just for the fact is that with the weather, we had some issues of clearance on a lot of these roads with my Chargers, and even with the new Durangos, they don't sit up as high as some four-wheel drives. So I'm going to try the pickups out just because of I'm sure this spring is going to be water issues, and I'm hoping that with a little better clearance, we can get through some of these places where we couldn't with our other vehicles.
I just brought it up because of this one. You mentioned you had people going to Sioux Falls that had to drive their own vehicles. If this is something that would tide you over till you got your vehicle, but
well, once we get, we just ordered a commission vehicle, so as soon as that comes, then I'll acquire your other one. So then I'll have. I don't really only have one vehicle that's really roadworthy for the transport vehicle, and when it was hard to get staff, relief without taking some of their own vehicles. So that was part of the issue with the jail.
okay. And I'm guessing this Durango might not be that roadworthy either, but I thought.
No. And right now, I've cut back the part-time deputy's hours, so his car is being driven by the full-time deputy. So I just cut his hours back, and actually he has no hours right now until we get my vehicles back in full force. So.
All right.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Item L is an action to approve the following appointments. Number one is Housing and Redevelopment Commission, one position, a 5-year term. Bobby Punt has applied, is the only application. Under Human Rights Commission, one position, a 3-year term. Matthew Rhodes has made an application. Extension Board, one position, 1-year term. Laura Stern has made an application. The BCOAC Advisory Board, Archery Range Volunteer, one position, 1-year term. Paul Weiss has made an application. Planning and Zoning Commission, an alternate position, 1 position, 3-year term. Spencer Dietrich made an application. Is there a motion to approve the appointments?
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any questions on any of the applicants? Any comments on any of the applicants?
Just so you are aware, I had noted in my staff report that Mr. Dietrich's application came in after the deadline, but since we have, short of having drafted an official policy, which I'm still working on, we have already advertised for that position twice, and my recommendation would be to go ahead and approve Mr. Dietrich this time.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Item 9 is our Commission Department Director's Report.
So the first part of my report is we've got information from Brookings Economic Development Corporation asking for $500 to help cover some expenses for the second year of the Communities of Excellence program. We do have $300 left in our public relations line for fiscal year 2019. I think if you want to still pay that out of FY19, that's fine. That budget can handle the extra $200. I did have a discussion with BDC. They didn't care when they got the check if it was yet this year in 2020. So if you want to wait for the 2020 budget, we could do that as well. I'm leaving that up to the board as to whether or not, what year you want it spent on it, and if you want to spend the money. Whatever you decide to do, I will put I will move it forward.
I'm in favor of us spending the money for that because I think this is a good investment, and it'd be great if we took it out of 2019 instead of leaving that in the general fund.
Any comments? Without objection, that'll be an amendment at our last meeting of the year.
That'll be a claim that you'll approve at the last meeting. So as Bob had mentioned with the that's not with the joint jurisdiction ordinance. It's kind of leading into that, but we have to have a joint meeting with the city council regarding a rezoning in the joint jurisdictional area. I noted on my staff report that they are looking at having those joint meetings the Tuesdays in January prior to the city council meetings. And I know I had said right at 6, but we got some clarification. They will be at 5:30 p.m. The first reading Tuesday, January 14th, and the second reading on Tuesday, January 28th. I need to know that we will have a quorum available of county commissioners able to attend those meetings, those joint meetings, for the purpose of approving the rezoning.
I'll be there for sure.
Yes. Angie said yes.
And what you're asking is January 14 and January 28 at
5:30 p.m.
I'll be there.
Okay.
Our request to them would probably be to put it on the beginning of their agenda if they could.
This is what this is. I think their agenda starts at 6, so they would handle this even prior to the start of their meetings.
Would work
to
just
get
fine.
that done.
Again, the first reading on the city side is, there's no testimony taken, so it would be just the first reading should be rather quick. The second one would allow that input. So second one could be longer, the first one should be pretty short. All right?
Okay.
And that request is for the full board?
The full board,
Yeah.
yep, because
Request
the
is for
full
the full
county
board.
commission and the full city council need to approve
We at least have to have a
the
quorum.
ordinance for the rezoning ordinance, because of this is in the joint, a request for the joint jurisdictional area. So if you can get those dates and that time on your calendars.
They're going to be here.
Here, yes, here in the council, or in the chambers, yes. And then the other, we did receive a letter from our current SDACC president, Cindy Heiberger. She's a commissioner out of Minnehaha County. She's asking that each county provide a contact person, a commissioner, to be that point of contact during the legislative session if there's pieces of legislation that come up that need county attention, or if we need commissioner input, or even maybe potentially commissioner attendance, and then we can spread the word. So that's her letter was included with my staff report, but I think they're going to be asking for each county to give a contact person. So I guess I'm looking for an idea of who you might, if somebody would like to volunteer for that, or be that person for the upcoming session.
I would volunteer to do that. I sit on public affairs as a liaison from the commission. During the session, we have a call-in every Wednesday, and I'm watching that legislation anyway. I'd be willing to do that if you'd like for me to do it.
Any other interest? Without objection, Commissioner Pierce will be appointed to that request.
And I report back to you on those meetings anyway already, so I don't think it would be anything more than what we're probably already doing.
A couple other additional things in addition to the meetings upcoming. We received information late in the day yesterday about a webinar that's going to take place tomorrow. It's actually going to start at 1 o'clock from 1 to 2:30. I do have information to register for the webinar if you want to do that on your own. Otherwise, this is regarding the I-29 overpass exchange project for the build grant. I should clarify that before I start talking. But the city is doing a group, having a group meet to hear the webinar tomorrow at 1 o'clock in one of their conference rooms on the city on second floor. So if you're interested in available to attend, you can let me know and I can pass that information on to the city so that they know to expect you. I will reach out to see if this is something that will be recorded. So if you're not able to attend, that you can go on when it's convenient for you to go on and hear it and hear the information firsthand. Any questions or comments?
I'm wondering if Brian would be available to attend that meeting and listen to the webinar with that group. The problem for the commission is that we have the pre-legislative luncheon that'll run, will we be done by 1 o'clock?
It wraps up right at about 1, maybe a little after. So it would be, you would have to step out of that meeting or the luncheon early to get to the webinar by 1 o'clock.
I would probably step out, make sure I get to this webinar.
Okay.
For sure.
And I can send Brian the information on it too.
I think going forward, there's been a request from the city manager for us to assign a commissioner to report back to us of what's going on with the 20th Street overpass. I've suggested that we have Brian involved, obviously, from the highway department in those meetings where it's appropriate. At the same time, I think we need a commissioner, and I think Larry's already expressed a desire that he could handle that with his highway experience and road experience. So without objection, I think we'll let Larry take that position with Brian's. Your attendance is going to be when it's needed, I guess, more than anything else. But we'll find out. They don't know yet if they're going to meet quarterly, if they're going to meet biweekly, semi-monthly, or what they're going to do yet. But we should be at least at the table with our $2 million investment in that. So any other suggestions on that? Any questions? Brian, you're okay with that? All right. Larry, you're okay with that?
Yeah.
I'll forward the information then on to those two, Brian and Larry.
Yeah.
Would you send that to me? I might dial in once I get back from the other meeting from my office.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And we're all going to be involved with that type of stuff with it. But going forward with those meetings, once we get into the environmental studies, it's probably quarterly before they'll meet because there's not a lot of information coming forward during that time. So at first there'll be several meetings probably, but after that it would be kind of quiet until we get down to the RFP stage and the construction stage. And that's about all I know about it. Okay, thank you.
Lastly, just want to mention that worked with Brian and Marty quite a bit on ordering the new commission vehicle for 2020. Looked at state bids, decided to look and ask locally for the Durango. Here at Einspar, they gave us a quote of, I think, like $600 more than the state bid, which is still under the bid requirements that we'd have to bid it ourselves. And with it just being $600 more in local, we decided to go that route. So that will be arriving hopefully January of 2020. We'll get our vehicle so we can transfer the Traverse to the Sheriff's Department because they're going to use that as a transport vehicle moving forward. So continue to move forward on that. Still well within our budget too for 2020. So, and then the last thing I have is the upcoming dates. Yesterday, we talked about there's the pre-legislative luncheon. Actually, I said noon. The meeting actually starts at noon. The lunch, I think, starts at about 11:30. So I think the speaker will start at noon, but you might, if you want to get in there and get through the lunch line, I suggest getting there about 11:30 tomorrow. We do have our potluck, holiday potluck this week. If you want to come and join us, it's from 11:30 to 1:30 on Thursday this week here in, usually in the break room across the hall. And then we have a couple of our dress-up days. If you want to join us at about 10 o'clock those days, you can get your picture taken with everybody else who is dressed up. We have Ugly Sweater Day on the 13th and Festive Attire Day on the 20th. We will be closed the 24th and 25th for Christmas, and the 1st for New Year's, and then just a reminder, Brookings SDSU Day at the Capitol, January 15th. That's all I had, unless you have any questions for me.
Any questions? Commissioner Pierce.
Sorry. The Traverse, between now and the time that we're going to get the new vehicle, do you have any idea how often we're going to be using that?
No.
Are we using it much?
No.
I know my staff is attending a training in Sioux Falls. I don't know the date, but it's this month, and they're taking the Traverse.
And is that a one-day thing?
It is.
Other than that, is there any reason why the sheriff's office, because it sounds like it's a hardship for Marty, the shortage on vehicles, can't have access to that vehicle if they need to use it? I don't know that Stacy heard me ask that.
Sorry.
I said, is there any reason between now and then, except for the time where we have it booked, that the sheriff's office couldn't have access to it so that they had another vehicle?
We book that through the highway. If you contact Linda and Dave Bublitz out at the highway and let them know what day, they get that on their calendar, and the other days then it would be free for commission or for the sheriff to use. I think the only issue with using that as a transport vehicle right now, it's not decked out as a transport vehicle right now, but if there is some need for it to use for staff travel, go ahead and book it. Absolutely.
I mean,
You know, actually, I forgot about the Traverse when they were going back and forth. It was hard enough to staff, and I didn't even think about this. We could have probably used that once in a while during those transports, or sending employees to Sioux Falls.
Any other questions? With that, item 12 is an executive session. I'm just so that we know what we're doing here. We're going to go into this. What's that? Oh, state's attorney's report. I always skip you, Dan. I don't know why. You should just raise your hand and say it's my turn.
Let's start taking it personal.
Yeah, I would too.
No, things are going well. Nothing new to report.
That's it.
That's it. That's probably why you skipped me.
That's probably why I skipped you. It says right here, it
Good
says,
news.
has nothing. All right, just as how we're going to proceed here, we have an executive session at 1 p.m., so we are not going to adjourn our meeting here. We are going to move into executive session per, what's the word? Codified law?
Are you going to do commissioner reports first?
No, I don't want to do that until later. No, we'll do commissioner reports. Well, all right. I don't even see it on here.
It's item number 11.
There we go. I'm trying to get through this as quickly as possible today here. All right, Commissioner Pierce, would you like to give us your short report?
I'll do my best.
Okay. I don't even have mine done.
On November 25th, I attended the U.S. Highway 14 Corridor Study Meeting here in this room. A lot of the rest of you were here. Very interesting. I don't think any final resolutions have been determined yet, and that the process is ongoing. On November 26th, I attended the 20th Street Interchange meeting with the city HD and HDR and the rest, a lot of you. And I think what we need to be watching for is how we're working out those agreements with the city, and how we're going to use our funds, whether we can pre-fund anything or not, so we can start getting those hydrology reports done, because that's what's going to take a long time. Last night at the East Brookings business meeting, Jackie Lanning said that they're looking at maybe trying to extend the time period for completion to 2024 or 2025. And I think we just want to keep an eye on that and know what's going on and be in compliance with our grant requirements on that. On November 27th, I attended the BEDC meeting, and there was an election of new officers, and City Councilor Dan Hansen was appointed as chair of BEDC for the 2020 upcoming year. On December 2nd, along with the rest of you, we reviewed proposals for the jail. On December 2nd, I attended the City Planning and Zoning Board because I sit on that board. And then we had our joint meeting with the County Planning and Zoning Board, which it's always interesting when we have our joint meetings. And as Mr. Hill said, we took our first look as planning commissions at the joint jurisdiction ordinance. And then we'll be going into those meetings where we're studying each section before a recommendation come back to the City Council, the County Commission, and then we'll all meet jointly again to approve all of that. There was interest expressed to me after that meeting by people that were excited about the possibility of the pilot project that's being proposed for doing some housing in the southern part of the county that didn't require 35 acres. So we'll have a lot more conversation on that. Attended the Ag Banquet on December 3rd. There was a really good turnout for that. Went to the Mayor's Holiday Celebration on December 5th. Last night I was at the East Brookings Business Meeting, served on the panel to talk about how we got to where we're at on the 20th Street interchange grant. I have a couple of things that aren't really calendar things that I would like to talk to you about. I think I've spoken with each of you individually, but I'd just like to go on the record about this. The sheriff came to us maybe 2 months ago and said we really needed to be looking at something for homeless people in Brookings and some temporary housing. And I had somebody, when I attended the Vision Brookings meeting, talk to me about that same issue. And she had the name of somebody in Pierre, Lorraine Pollock, who has a grant program that's available to provide funding. And there is going to be, I don't know if we're going to call it an ad hoc group, meeting of about 12 people sometime in January. We're working on getting that set up. Commissioner Boersma and Mike Holhauser will be part of that group to look at the funding and what possibilities there are and all of those different kinds of things. It looks like it has to be a government entity that applies for the grant and administers it. We'll know more. I don't know if it's going to work for us, but I just wanted you all to know that that's in the works, being discussed. We'll see what happens on that. And then the other thing is, I don't know if Stacy's had an opportunity to send out the email yet, and I know nobody would have had time to review it because I just sent it to her this morning. But President Trump issued Executive Order 13888, which deals with refugees. And what that executive order says is that if the governor of your state approves refugees to come into the state, then the next step is for local government to make a determination on whether or not you wanted refugees and how that would impact your workforce. These are the issues. I just want to give you all a heads up that is going to be an issue. They've already been dealing with that in Minnesota, if you've been following any of the news. But what I asked Stacy to send out to you, Bob Munt, who is the CEO of the Sioux Falls Development Foundation, sent a letter to Governor Noem asking Governor Noem to support that for the state of South Dakota. And maybe you would have an opportunity to look at that and see if we want to take any action, if that's anything that we're interested in supporting or not. We don't have to decide that today, but I wanted you to know that that's coming down. And then that would be my report.
Thank you. I got a call yesterday asking if the county had taken any action on that immigration policy, and I said I have not heard it, I have not seen it, and we have taken no action. So I guess we'll take a look at it and decide. All right, thank you.
The office received a phone call yesterday asking about that same issue. And so I did reach out to Chris Jacobson at our association, and they're looking into it as well at that level for us. I mean, if it comes down to needing like a resolution that the counties could approve, it could come down maybe from the association. They're looking into it as well.
Thank you.
And what I think I'll do then, because obviously some things are going on, I had a string of emails on it. Maybe I'll forward that whole string to Stacy and she can send it out to everybody to take a look at.
Thank you. Commissioner Boersma, your report.
November 19th, I was a speaker for Leadership Brookings in 2 different sessions, one on communication and government and one related to budgeting processes, which was incredibly interesting. And one of the items of note that I brought back to several of the boards that I sit on was that in terms of the Leadership Brookings classes' top funding priorities, mental health was among the top. So over a lot of economic development initiatives, mental health was one of the top things that they wanted to see funded more aggressively in future budget cycles. The 20th, I was part of the Resilient Communities Roundtable, And then a lot of the other things were similar to Commissioner Pierce. So the 25th, the Highway 14 session, and then was a part of the mental health panel at Wooden Legs that evening with school board and legislators from the area talking about mental health specifically in Brookings County and different initiatives that are happening at a local and state level. The 26th was involved in the interchange meeting with HDR. The 27th was an ICAP board meeting. The 2nd was the special session for discussion of jail items, and then the joint jurisdiction planning meeting. The 3rd was the Ag Appreciation Banquet, and then the 5th was the mayor's holiday party. So it's been a busy 3 weeks.
Commissioner Krugman.
20th 10 county meeting in Huron was well attended, and the representatives spoke, and the meth epidemic is something they definitely have their eyes on at the state level also, and all of the pressure it's putting on the counties and the jails and the judicial system and the whole works and stuff like that. So they said they are definitely looking at that on the state level. Then on 25th, I had 3 meetings. I had the BCOAC meeting. We went through that, looking at budgets and looking at talking to workforce and different things like that of part-time employees. The building looks really good. When they took a week off to mine for the lead, and they redid the floors, and it looks nice out there. The parking lot looks great. So, really looking good out there right now, ready for the busy season. Membership is up also at the BCOAC. So then went to the Highway 14 bypass meeting. I went to the, what session was that? I went to the 3 o'clock session, and they talked about public input. This is the 2nd meeting for that. They'll have one more. But today's the date to getting the input in from the highway bypass. And there's just a lot of decisions they got to make with interchange over the interstate, also the interchange on the west end of Brookings over there where there's kind of an overpass. And this discussion goes all the way into Arlington through Volga and all that kind of stuff. There was some questioning whether they are going to go further than Highway 14 bypass, and it doesn't sound like they're going to do that. And so we've talked to them about going further to that Aurora corner, but in this study, it's not going to happen. But a lot of landowners, property owners to the north of the bypass between 22nd Avenue were at that meeting that I was at and discussed questioning the ability to get across to their property on how they design that road. Production, though, will not be going until like 2024, they think, of that whole area, so there's time for discussion and more meetings. But the good thing about it is they are going to be putting traffic signals up at the 22nd Avenue and bypass intersection. They thought they were going to have it done this fall, but it's going to be done this spring. Those are going to be, I don't say permanent, temporary. They're not temporary, but they're not going to be the original system that will be put in when the redesign of the bypass will be. So they will be there coming hopefully this spring, which I think everybody's really happy to see for safety purposes there and traffic flow. So then that evening I went to the Brookings Health meeting and talked with them. Sadaho was represented there. That's their, like we have our county commissioners group. Sadaho is the health systems, hospitals mechanism. And so they gave a brief about what's going to happen and Medicaid, Medicare, and all that kind of stuff. And so that was some good, interesting stuff there. 27th, went to the beta meeting. They're looking at numbers and still working on trying to work with the school district on the building a garage, and that's going to be an ongoing process. And then the 2nd, we had the executive session for the CMRAs, went through those. December 3rd, went to the Ag Appreciation Banquet. December 5th, had a meeting with Commissioner Boersma and a couple city councilors about rectifying the jail situation, and then went to mayor's appreciation party later that night. And then on the 9th, went to East Brookings annual meeting last night. And so got some good updates from the city, and it's always a good meeting to go to. They always have good speakers and good information at that meeting. So again, busy 3 weeks.
Commissioner Jensen.
On the 25th, I attended the BCOAC meeting with Commissioner Krogman. On December 2nd, I had our jail proposals. I went through that. I ended up going early to the zoning meeting, so I sat in on the city zoning and the city-county joint jurisdiction meeting, and I actually sat through the county zoning meeting that evening. On the 3rd, went to the ag banquet. On the 4th, I hadn't been to a conservation district meeting for a while, so I went. They've been very busy. The CRP acres within the county is kind of looking up for the CRP acres. They'll be taking new contracts and reviewing old contracts, and they're dealing with some issues of what's actually growing in these acres and what's being done on them. This summer they were busy. They actually seeded 3,200 acres for various farms with their, I basically call them a specialty seeder that Conservation District owns. And they're currently handling a drainage complaint that they're working through. So that was kind of very interesting meeting. On that Thursday, attended the WEAG meeting. Misty's been busy with bills, and she's currently working on getting ready for chemical bids that'll be coming due. She's kind of losing some employees due to graduation. She's recruiting employees and also working on DOT contracts. It was a good meeting at the end of the year, wrap up everything and where she's got chemicals stored and such. And I believe that's it, but I do have a conflict tomorrow. And Stacy, if you could find a replacement that would like to go to the dinner tomorrow. That's it.
As you can see, all the commissioners have been pretty busy. Fortunately, all the things I went to, most of you also went to, so I'll just kind of highlight those things too here. 19th, this I did that the rest of you didn't do. Along with city staff was Leadership Brookings met up here all day long. It was great to see so many new faces at that meeting. Leadership Brookings is reborn again. I think it looked like a full class, and everybody was attentive and asked some good questions, and appreciate the county staff participating and answering those questions too. And Marty got long-winded, as Marty usually does with his presentation, so I had to shut him off, but it went really well. I think Marty would agree it was a good meeting. On the 20th was the Sioux Valley Commissioners meeting that Ryan had talked about. On the 25th was the Highway 14 project corridor, the bypass. Went to that meeting. The 26th was the overpass meeting here that we talked about. So after the project, we did the overpass meeting. 21st was an LEPC meeting at the hospital. Richard and Lorraine joined us there. Typical business for the LEPC. On the 2nd was the planning and zoning meeting, was discussed about already, the joint one. The 3rd was the Egg Appreciation Banquet, well attended. That was a fun time. And the 5th was the listen to an online webinar from the EDA out of Denver that basically covered some of the things that we're already covering here, except it covered some small business issues that I don't think we have any right now that have come forward. And also the mayor's reception that evening, well attended, always a good time. On the 8th, I had another webinar of some sort there. I can't remember what it was now. And then on the 9th, we had the East Brookings meeting, and that was interesting meeting last night, and the good report from the business group out there, and Ryan covered that too. So that completes my report. Now, is there anything else I'm missing here? Can we move into the executive session?
I
Oh, yeah, go ahead,
question, I guess.
Commissioner. Then I'll let you talk, Marty, after him. Commissioner Kroger.
How are we gonna handle personal action notices? It's gonna be an executive session, but there's other, I mean, I'm not sure why it's there, but I'm guessing we have to discuss personnel situation, but there's other stuff that needs to get passed today, so are we gonna come out of executive session and then get that stuff?
We could come out of executive session and make that motion and pass that. Then we will recess until the 1 o'clock executive session.
Okay, I just didn't want something to get lost where there's a personnel action notice that doesn't get passed today that,
This one will include in the motion for executive session, possible action afterwards.
okay.
With that, the codified law for the executive session is.
SDCL 125-21 for personnel.
Okay. Is there a motion to move into that with possible action afterwards?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are in the executive session. We'll take a 10-minute break here, move into executive session, possible action afterwards, and then just so everybody knows, we will reconvene at 1 o'clock for our next executive session.
Temperature? Yeah, and it's wired in, so we shouldn't have to worry about, it's got battery backup, so we shouldn't have to worry about it having to crawl up there and change times during daylight savings and.
And the neutral safety switch is bypassed on the track.
Jenna.
We don't even have a motion on the table regarding personnel action notices. Okay. So it's not a motion to amend. Yeah, I've got it. Yes.
I guess I told her to come up, so she's probably on her way, so, I haven't heard from her, but if it gets to be too much later, we can just move forward.
Oh,
When was that?
Well, the consent agenda has always been roll call, so yeah, I guess just roll call.
Can,
Sean, are we ready?
I was going to answer you.
He'll come out and poke his head out.
Thank you. Need a motion to come out of executive session?
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. We're now out of executive session. And is there any action we'd like to take on item C, approval of personnel action notices?
there was an error in the personnel notices. That error has been corrected, and I would move approval of the personnel action notices as corrected.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Is there any other comments? If not, we'll call the roll.
Pierce?
Aye.
Boersma?
Aye.
Krugman?
Aye.
Jensen?
Aye.
Bartley?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Motion carries. We will now recess until 1 p.m. when we'll reconvene for an executive session.